The shelter-in-place order has made parents learn how to balance homeschooling and working from home. Municipal producer Yuxiao spoke to some parents in town to find out more about their new reality.
The Gregg family has a middle schooler and a high schooler. The parents, Liz and Ben, are both teachers in Needham. They understand why school acted slowly for the first few weeks.
They wanted to make sure, first of all, that students who needed it were going to be fed. Kids who get free and reduced lunch and get breakfast and lunch at school needed to still receive that service. And I totally understand that. That was their priority. And the second priority, at least in Natick where I teach too, was getting laptops, hotspots, tablets to families so that we could attempt to teach online. So there was this sort of strange scrambling period where school systems are trying to get everybody up and running.
The first rearrangement is to make sure everyone gets their own space.
We moved some furniture around and put lights in spaces and outlets and chargers, and so people could have semi-privacy and have a space where they could always leave their classroom situation set up. So my husband's in the playroom, that's the Zoom room, because he works the most online than any of us. He needs that privacy. And my daughter and my son have corners in the downstairs that are we move furniture for them, and I teach kindergarten upstairs because I'm the loudest as I'm singing and I have kids on screen all the time.
The beginning of remote learning is a bit overwhelming.
Like, oh my God, I've got 48 emails. And my son started just reading through them and just sort of going with the email and doing the things in that email. And then because of that, he missed one way down on the list that said, like, today at 9 is mandatory, you have to be on. But he missed it because he was still on email 3 doing that thing. So my daughter has figured out that, like, Monday morning, she does nothing all morning except go through those emails and organize and sort them into folders of the classes and the order of priority and timing, and writes down on a piece of paper her Zoom schedule. So she's figured that out really well, and I think my son is going to be figuring out the same thing.
Liz tried to help them with scheduling, but she soon found out they were old enough to set up their own priorities.
She writes the A and B and C and D. These are the kinds of days and schedules that they have. And she writes down exactly when her meetings are and what work she wants to do each day, checks it, crosses it off. But again, they're older. If they were 5 and I was doing this, I think I would have to be very involved. I would basically have to be right next to them as I'm watching my kindergartners. Their parents have to be pretty much right next to them so they can mute and unmute themselves or leave the meeting when it's time or get on at a certain time.
However, for the high schooler, the quarantine has interrupted important moments of life.
She and all of her friends are basically in mourning, and they're juniors, like the seniors who may not get back this year, and they're missing all of their senior fun and their graduation and the opportunity to have closure on a year for which they've worked really hard. I mean, this is the point of the year when all the hard work you've done starts to pay off, right? You've built your community, you've done the hard work, and now comes the, like, we're getting to where it's nice out and we can celebrate all of our work and learning together, and they're not going to get that.
The Philbin-Chin family with a 2nd grader and a 5th grader decided to start a structured schedule right away after the school closed.
Giving them, a vacation would just make it harder to get that ball rolling, once we started getting information from the school.
But soon, Tanya realized it was hard to implement.
We were running into, Mom, my friend can, talk to me now via FaceTime. They can't talk at 3:30 when I have, my iPad fun time, as I was calling it. Basically, for the following week, I changed it to, okay, here's your to-do list. I have a big whiteboard, one list for one child, one list for the other. They would need to do all those things in order to earn iPad time to do whatever they want on it.
2 weeks later, Needham Public Schools started its remote learning schedule, which at the beginning could be a little hectic for parents to deal with.
Did the teacher send me that Zoom, meeting link? Was that in an email, or is that in Google Classroom? And then once you're in Google Classroom, where is it? And so I felt there was definitely a little bit of a, learning curve to, like, okay, where are the links and who needs to be where? And a couple times both kids had calls at the same time. And so, one ended up being a little bit late because I was helping the other one.
Tablets become indispensable for both education and entertainment. Tanya uses an app called Our Pact to control her children's iPad.
You can go through every single app, either block them always, or have them be just when you grant them, time to be on the iPad. That way, I knew that when I said go do, math or reading, whatever it might be, that's all that they had access to.
Tanya also fills their schedules with other learning resources.
For my daughter, I asked her to go on Epic. Basically, someone reads a story to them. Mysteryscience.com is a great website, and I know that they do use that in school. I'll send them a link to a science video, and then I'll say, after you watch the video, I want you to tell me 2 new facts that you learned. So that way I make sure that they're, actually paying attention to what they're watching.
The Bourdeau family, with a kindergartner and a first grader, is coping with the new normal at different paces. Mom Claire just started a new position right before the shutdown.
I need like a block of time to actually be productive, and starting a new job was even more overwhelming because I didn't know anything. I'm learning. It's a new industry for me. So I'm like not only drinking from the fire hose, I'm like drinking from the water main break.
Claire and her husband Steve take shifts to look after the boys.
So I do like from 8:30 to 12:30 at my desk, mostly uninterrupted. Occasionally there's something where I might need to, he might have a meeting that he has to be at, so I might have to help the kids get onto their Zoom meetings when they have them or whatnot. But for the most part, I'm uninterrupted for the morning shift, and then we switch.
Only 2 years apart, the 2 brothers act very differently to remote learning.
My kindergarten in particular has no interest in doing any of it. We tried doing rewards, we're trying, all sorts of things. It's really affecting him negatively. And so we're trying not to force more on by forcing him to do the activities. We're doing other things like playing games that have math in them, or reading. Like he's reading words to me. So I'm like, well, he's actually getting this without doing the activities that they're sending. The first grader, who's 7.5, has done phenomenal. He loves being with people and us, so he's happy. Like, we're here all the time. So he's constantly entertained. He's never alone. He's got his brother. They play very well together most of the time. He's pretty content.
The isolation situation is also affecting the kindergartner more.
The kindergartner was on a scooter and he rode over some like fallen branches on the sidewalk and he fell. He got up and said, "I'm going home." He was crying and just ran home. He left the scooter there. I'm going home. So I went after him and I followed him in. I said, "Hey, what's up?" He had 2 skinned knees, and he wasn't even crying about the knees. He curled up into a ball on the couch, and I was like, what's wrong, buddy? And he's like, "The coronavirus made me fall. It keeps making me fall." And I was just like, oh my God. And he's blaming the coronavirus on him falling, which clearly isn't the case, but he's seeing that he's been falling a bit. Maybe he's distracted, maybe he's not paying attention, but whatever's happening to him in his world, it's because of the coronavirus. So to me, that meant like, well, we got to make sure that we don't talk too much about it. Once we start to hear more about changes that are coming in a positive way, like they're going to start to open barbershops or whatever the next step of reopening society looks like, when we have some good news to share, then we'll talk to them about it.
The kindergarten teacher has helped with easing the negative effect on him.
She came over and delivered a letter to our house, and it just said, "Hey, buddy, I noticed that you were being shy, and if you'd like, I'd love to do a FaceTime with you. If you'd be, want to talk to me." And so he lit up like a bulb. He was so excited that she came and she reached out to him. She offered to drive by and, say hi from the car, window. And that's like incredible that they're doing that.
They have exercise in the morning to kick off the day.
Just on bikes, walks, scooters. We play Frisbee, just get that extra energy out. They're 2 young, active boys. They're constantly moving. So the more exercise they can get, the better.
Compared to academics, Claire focuses more on their emotional well-being.
The emotional stability is more important right now for the younger kids anyway. I'm not too concerned that this is going to affect their academic future. Their first grade and kindergarten, like they're learning the basics right now. I'm sad that they're missing their friends and and the social aspect of what the younger grades give them. But I'm not worried about their academic future. They'll catch up.
The Bello family with a son in kindergarten and a daughter in the 3rd grade is having fun with out-of-school activities. The daughter has learned to have playdates on Zoom.
For my daughter, she has learned to do virtual playdates, taking, an iPad outside with her friend on it, and they were having like jump rope contests. And they even, like, her and her friend one day had an interactive playing dolls. Like, she set up a situation in her room and the friend did that.
Staying home allows the siblings to have hands-on work together.
And they decided to make a dog house out of all these, cardboard Amazon boxes that had come. And they were occupied for hours. It was the greatest thing, and they didn't fight. It was, it was kind of a miracle. They weren't getting into a lot of arguments.
The children are learning skills they normally would not be experiencing at their age.
Even just helping out with cooking and things like that. My son was like cutting and peeling a cucumber tonight because I was on a call, and they're navigating computer skills that they would have never been expected to navigate potentially at these ages.
Melissa also tried a set schedule, but that didn't work out well either.
I would say, okay, you're going to do this art project now. And they'd be like, no, you said that wasn't on the schedule to 1 p.m., but I needed to move it up because I knew now that I had a call at 1 p.m. What I ended up doing instead was, instead of allotting what they had to do to specific times, I made a list of what they had to do, their required activities. And I don't per se care what order they do it, but they have to do all their required work. And then they can move on to those optional things, which is more like arts and crafts.
For Melissa and her husband, Eric, who both work for corporate, juggling parenting with work requires more flexibility.
Today I was on a conference call and I was making them lunch because you've got to feed them. And they're not going to wait till like maybe 1:30 or 1:45 when the call is over. Sometimes even, at 6 or 7 at night, especially our daughter, she's finishing up some schoolwork for the night with us because we might not have been able to help her at 2 p.m. There are nights where we both are working longer hours because there are just some things, whether it's putting together a presentation or, creating a spreadsheet or whatever our jobs demand. That stuff is harder to do a little bit during the day because you don't get that, peace and quiet to focus.
Sometimes they'll have an impromptu happy hour.
Their behavior was just kind of a little out of control, and we said, we're going to get in the car and we're just going to take a drive. And, we found an ice cream place and got some curbside ice cream to go just to have everyone get, a 20-minute change of scenery type of reset. So I think my husband and I have worked hard to acknowledge that we need that. And sometimes when behavior, isn't as good as we would like, we're trying to acknowledge that it's hard for them, but we certainly still have, there's the same rules and they have to do their schoolwork to, earn screen time.
The family has adapted to the new normal. They have more concerns over how schools are going to cope with the uncertain future.
What are they learning from this, and how can they plan so that maybe they could do more, if the kids can't go back to school right away? Or, they talk about there being a second wave of this. What if that's in the early fall and they have to take a month off from school? How are they going to plan for that?
The Kelly family enjoys their extended time together. Dad Liam is a programmer and worked from home most of the week prior to the lockdown.
That's been kind of quiet during the day in the past, and now there's a lot going on.
Mom Tao teaches art classes in her home studio. With classes cancelled, she's spending more time helping kids with out-of-school projects that are screen-free.
There are points where they're all set, all done, they finish everything that they're assigned, and they come downstairs ready, can I please just play a game today, or can I, the worst is, can I have electronics? I think the struggle today for every parent is the fight for the kids to not be on screens. We had to spend a lot of time, I had a lot of hands-on time really creating projects with them and making sure, and especially with our younger son, teaching him ways to occupy himself that are not on screen.
They also make sure the kids are making the most out of school resources.
They're definitely aware of what the school has sent out that the school has said is optional. they said, whatever electives your kids are taking this trimester, we're opening up all the materials for all the electives to every student. Obviously, these are all optional. And so, the interest level in doing things that are optional like that is not very high. So that's, but again, we have to insist that some of it has to get done, even if the school said it's optional, and they're accepting it slowly but surely.
At the end, the families have all chosen to embrace the silver lining of the situation. There is still anxiety and fear of the unknown going forward, but every day they are coping better at home during the crisis. For the Needham Channel News, I'm Yuxiao Yuan.